What's one more? Hey folks, wanted to take a few minutes to chat through the Poison Molten Strike Pathfinder character that I've been playing for about a week or so. It is undoubtedly one of the strongest characters I've played in quite a while, and that is thanks in no small part to Vengeant Cascade, as we've seen here. Most folks, if you've been following a lot of the general POE landscape right now, it is pretty apparent that Vengeant Cascade is broken. And most definitely for poison as well. It's obviously been fantastic for bow attacks, but for the Molten Strikes and Volcanic Fissures of the world, it also adds a ton of additional projectile hits, which scales very well when you get the right gear next to it. So to jump right in general, like I said, we are doing Molten Strike, and the way that we are actually working through the poison damage aspect is we're using one of these experimented bases, the Pneumatic Dagger from Heist, saying that all damage from hits can poison. This means that we are able to scale elemental damage and just generic increased damage from a number of different sources, and we can still do all of our poison that way. You know, we aren't pigeonholed into just doing physical or chaos damage, and we have a lot of additional opportunities with how to scale our damage itself. So as we can see here, I have an LE dagger with decent attack speed and some chance to poison on hit. We crafted hits can't be evaded here because going into everything that we want to alongside accuracy as well, sounds just absolutely awful. To quickly touch on the Crucible tree, I definitely don't have anything particularly crazy here. We have some damage over time and the attack speed, less global damage mod. That is effectively it. We have some minimum charges here that ultimately don't do a whole lot because we have full uptime on Frenzy Charge generation anyway, and then this explicit speed modifier magnitudes roll, I think, is giving me 2% additional attack speed here. So nothing particularly crazy from a damage perspective. One thing that is worth noting with Molten Strike, as you may have seen in some of the clips that I had, is that the magma balls that fall will then fall, hit, and bounce back to me, and then hit a second time. To get as many overlaps as we possibly can, we want to make sure that those magma balls fall in a small enough cluster around you as an individual. You can do that by getting less projectile speed. So I actually go in to this cluster and get the reduced projectile speed and then the less projectile speed mastery. The less prod speed mastery itself may be a bit overkill, but it is what I've been using now, and it feels decent. If you really would want to swap between mapping and bossing, you could most definitely spec out of these 4 points, and you would have a larger AoE spread, and that mixed with an Ancestral Call in the links would mean that your general mapping is going to be much faster. As I showed with some of the clips, the Veritania tornadoes tanking the Cirrus beams, We are quite tanky to a lot of, non-huge one-shot multi-hit attacks. That is very much thanks to the general Pathfinder ascendancy, and then also the Petrified Blood use case. So for those that don't know this general defensive setup, essentially what we're doing is we are saying we want to take a number of hits, as many hits as we possibly can ultimately, and then we have this gain 3 charges when you're hit by an enemy on a bunch of our flasks. This, in combination with the recover life when you use a flask, will help keep us topped off for a lot of multi-hits. This is good because this gain 3 charges is affected by our flask charge generation. So any of our flask charges gained modifier, so the 60%, is going to increase each time we get hit, which means that not only are we constantly sustaining, we have permanent uptime on these flasks here, it means that we'll also be getting a ton of additional charges and constantly refreshing these, recovering life back. That's been beneficial for general hits, but to sort of smooth out a lot of the playstyle as well, we also leverage Petrified Blood. This is helpful by splitting up what the total net hit damage is and putting a portion of that over as a degen. For the folks that don't know, we are actually able to prevent that degen from effectively ever killing us. That comes from hits, and that is by getting damage recouped as life. So Petrified Blood essentially says that take a portion of damage and you lose it over 4 seconds. Damage recoup says take a portion of damage and regain it over 4 seconds. And so the goal would be whatever percentage of the hit that you are losing over 4 seconds, you want that same amount of damage recouped as well. So because I have because of Ashes the Star, I have a 2245 Petrified Blood. This averages out to be roughly 27% damage that is going to be lost over 4 seconds. So that means that is about how much I need in recoup. I currently have that by getting the 24% here on tree, and then I have one of these million jewels, this one right here, that has another 4%, so I have 28% damage taken recouped as life. You can most definitely get it as 2 ring suffixes instead. You can get, if you have catalysts, I think you can get up to 18% rolls. It'll put you at 36, and you will have plenty, and you won't need to supplement here as well too. Rounding out the defenses, given that we want to be hit, we don't really want to spec into a ton of evasion. So we can see here, I have very little armor and evasion. Evasion being fine, we have spell damage, suppression chance, and then we are also taking less elemental damage with our flasks. But given that we have no armor, physical damage will just kind of insta-kill us. That is, unless we convert all of it to elemental damage taken. And especially in a sword and shield type setup, that is reasonably easy to do. We are able to get 50% of fizz damage converted from fizz to lightning from our lightning coil. We can get another up to 20% from a Dawnbreaker. With the flask effect we get on tree, we can get another 20% on a Taste of Hate, and then we can get 15% on a rare helmet. So this puts me at 105% converted, which means that I do have a bit of wiggle room with the rolls on the Taste of Hate and the Dawnbreaker. If you are not using a shield, you are also able to get some of this fizz damage conversion from a Watcher's Eye modifier from one of the Purity auras. But I am using a Dawnbreaker, so I don't have to do that, which means the auras that I can use are more damage in Anger and Wrath. Ultimately, those are the main exciting items that I'm using here. Obligatory call out that this Ashes is most definitely not necessary in any capacity. The additional quality is, of course, giving me a bit of extra damage, and it's saving me like 3% recoup on the Petrified Blood. The Aura Reservation is not actually doing much of anything. If I were to take it off, well, my items will lose the intelligence that they need. But if I were to not use it, I would still be able to reserve all of my auras. This 73 mana left is still plenty with the reservation that I have. And then all I would likely do is tick my vitality down a level or two, so I'm closer to 50% reservation here. But aside from that, we aren't doing anything particularly crazy. Most all of our other gear is just life, res, and spell suppress. Some attributes as well too, so nothing particularly crazy. I am using the new Tanuahi gloves for mostly permanent uptime on Onslaught and Adrenaline. Onslaught is effectively up all the time, given that you can't gain Adrenaline while you have it. There's going to be a short duration in which it is down, but the amount that we hit and the fact that we hit so consistently means that it is effectively up all of the time. It is worth noting that in a Petrified Blood setup, you need to make sure that you are reserving at least half of your life. If you are not reserving half of your life while using Petrified Blood, you will never actually turn off your leech, which means you will never proc Adrenaline or Onslaught. So if you didn't want to use these gloves and you wanted to do a different Petrified Blood setup where you didn't reserve all of your life, you can most definitely use something like these snakebite gloves, or otherwise these are all still perfectly reasonable as well too. But aside from that, we aren't using anything else particularly crazy. I am currently working through trying to kill all of the Ubers. I've done Uber Maven so far. I have attempted and not succeeded at killing my first Uber Shaper and Uber Eater of Worlds. I think most of that is due to inexperience with the fight and doubly inexperience with playing a melee character against a lot of the endgame bosses, because even as much as this character does a ton of damage, melee still kind of sucks at times. But otherwise, really the only upgrades I have now are quite high-level upgrades. We would be looking for good corruptions on Dawnbreaker. I definitely still have room to grow on the pneumatic dagger and on the Crucible tree itself as well too. And then I would love to see a temp chains corrupt on the Tanuahi, which means that I could likely drop my Arcanist brand setup, because frankly I hate Arcanist brand a lot. But otherwise the build is fantastic and it is serving me quite well. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I hope you have a great day.